We just finished wrapping up HAX number 8, Demoday. We had 15 startups come back from China with us after 4 months of hard work and present their projects. So you can actually see many of them all around here at the moment. Some of them you can try, some will put you to sleep, some will wake you up. Some are a little bit dangerous. Okay. And now the idea was to take advantage of this gathering in this space to share also with the broader community some of the lessons learned. You can see some of them are probably a bit painful, few body counts in the hardware space. So we have a panel of founders who will share their experience of building the company and how they could have made it a little bit easier, the things they've done right, the things they've done wrong. So quickly about who am I, what I'm talking about, our first little announcement. So we have food and drink thanks to Triple. Triple is a company from Taiwan that's helping hardware founders to match with manufacturers and suppliers in Taiwan. We have 3 of them with us tonight. They have a desk over there if you want to talk to them. Triple people, say hi, thank you. Excellent. So that's another opportunity for current suppliers and partners. So I'm Benjamin. I'm one of the 3 partners running HAX, the accelerator focused on hardware, and mostly live in Hong Kong and Shenzhen, but near this week for the Demoday. For those of you who are not familiar with HAX, we basically have a mission. The mission is to basically solve the world's problems with hardware, no less. And there's a lot of problems. If you go around and talk to the founders, you'll realize that there's an infinity of problems to solve. Some are quite big. And we developed a methodology we like to call lean hardware, which is not exactly entirely where it is with software, but it's already pretty good. And the first element of it is to focus on building the right thing. So that's one of the topics we'll talk about during the panel. Second is building things right. Because if you make something that's amazing but super expensive, like I've seen in some robotics lab, for example, that is called EPFL, and they have in Switzerland, they have a fantastic lab, but their thing is so far from market because it's so expensive and the applications are so unexplored that it's not there. And then cheap fast, because market doesn't wait. So we'll hear from the founders about that. In terms of the categories we focus on, we started with a lot of maker devices and lifestyle products, but now we evolved through the house technologies. We have 3 startups here doing health, robotics, from crazy ping-pong robots to massive rovers, infrastructure tech, and fab for fabrication infrastructure. Through that, we discovered a number of new kind of buzzwords and evolution of all those categories. So we talk about IoT, but there's really much more to it than just putting anything on the internet. Coachware, personal farming, which has the device that's there, reactive robots, microfactories, precision production, and more. Robots, collaboration robots. So there's all those things. Metabolic tech, it's one startup over there. So that's about it. If you want to contact me for more information about HAX, Ben at HAX.co, and I think that you'll see and switch to the panel. So let me invite our 4 panelists and moderator to talk about various topics. So I listed a few here, but they will have plenty more to say, such as how do you make your own life, how do you make difficult decisions, how do you overcome the biggest challenges you have, what are the next ones, how you deal with fundraising, what kind of NDEs you suffered, and did that bring you clarity or just pain? So all this from our panelists. So please welcome Dave, Clement, Ian, Alvaro, and Rosanne. Thank you.
He'll join us shortly. Okay, so great. This is a really great opportunity to learn from some founders who have taken a company from its product phase all the way through to commercialization, and in some cases, very, very high orders and high volume manufacturing. So they've all had slightly different experiences. Some have gone the crowdfunding route. They've all been there since the beginning of the company, so they'll be able to talk about their early experiences, what it was like to work with a factory, what it was like to develop their own product. So to get started, if you guys could introduce yourselves, a little bit about what you're doing, and then how you got started, why you decided to build this company. Dave.
Okay. Alright, so my name is Alvaro Almeida. I'm the CEO of Volterra. We make desktop manufacturing equipment for electronics. Rosanna, you said you wanted to reveal what we do and why we do it?
Yeah, what you're doing, the products that you make, where you are, and what was your inspiration behind starting it?
So my business partners and I, we were basically in the industry developing electronics products in a variety of ways. I was on the industrial electronics side of things, then we went to robotics automation, and it was just way too damn hard to make circuit boards. Especially in low volume when you're just in the prototyping stage. It was a pain in the ass. This was 2012, 2013. We're like, alright, 3D printers are really cool for mechanical engineers, but we're electrics guys, like electronics guys. Where's our fun toys? And so we started playing around with silver nanoparticle conductive inks, so that's what you do apparently. And now we have a printer that can print out a circuit board in an hour, and it's a pretty happy customer.
Hi, so my name is Clement, and I am the CEO of Print. So we are also making a printer, which is a little bit smaller, and it doesn't print secret codes, but it prints Harry Potter pictures. So, there is a picture, but there is also an augmented reality component where the picture is coming back to life. And we started in France, as you can hear with my accent. Me and my co-founder, we were both in the same school called Ecole Polytechnique. We studied at Berkeley, and after that we wanted to build a company, and we wanted to build hardware because we appreciated the challenge of building something physical. We understood that it was much more complex than anything on the app side. So that's, we liked the challenge, and we wanted to build a fun product, something that we feel we could use and that all our friends and family could use. So photography was one of our passion, and we ended up having that crazy idea of bringing back Polaroid to life by making it so much more very small. So that's where we are.
Ian Bernstein, CTO and co-founder at Sphero. So we're a robotics and connected play company. So we build robots like BB-8. Started the company in 2010. We're located in Boulder, Colorado. We were the first hardware company to go through Techstars, and was super excited to learn about HAX. It was developing just hardware companies. His inspiration for the company, I built robots since I was 12. I was working at part-time at a robotics company in Colorado, and we were spending thousands of dollars on these controllers for these robots that we were selling to researchers. And I thought, well, maybe I could use my smartphone as the brains for these robots. And this was end of 2009, and nobody was controlling physical things with your smartphone back then. So that was the inspiration. I ended up meeting my co-founder. We controlled lots of stuff, like I could start my car and roll down the windows and stuff in an Android device, and control lights and things like that. And got into Techstars and came up with the idea for Sphero, and got excited about that more than door locks and starting my car.
So cool. I'm on the stage with the Sphero guy. Kind of weird, right? Isn't this weird for you guys? So, yeah. Pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, so yeah. Like 2 years ago, we went through HAX, class 4. I had been doing art installations here in San Francisco. I'd done an animated GIF camera. Camera makes animated GIFs with a big crank on the side of it at a party at Yerba Buena. And called two of my friends who are also artists working in industrial design and electrical engineering, and I said, hey, let's build a kit. Can I hire you guys to do this thing? And they said, this is pretty rad. We should make this a thing. Went through HAX, and then we launched Auto, which is a hackable animated GIF camera, and we had this, enormous success in terms of articles, but not in terms of units sold. So we had like 400 articles written about it on the internet, but we only sold 400 units, which wasn't super hot. And we had all this retail interest, and it was really great, and we realized that it cost $250 to make our camera, and we also sold our camera for $250. So if you know anything about retail or hardware or margins, you realize that's actually a really terrible business. And then instead of basically making our 400 cameras and then getting on with our lives, we realized that maybe there were other of us that were having this problem, and so we said, how do we make the guts cheaper? And then about 9 months later, we launched Chip, the world's first $9 computer. Hold on. It's somewhere.
You developed a $9 computer in 8 months?
It was more like 6.
He developed a $9 computer in 6 months. That's... Yeah.
I mean, the real trick was the software, but it's a different conversation. The point is, anyway, the point is we sold from 400 units to 40,000 backers, basically, within a year. So it was totally weird. So yeah, that's the story.
So that's actually a great segue into the next question, which is about building the right product. So a huge part of the lean hardware philosophy is to make sure before you start putting prototypes together, and certainly before you start doing tooling, you make sure that you're building a product that people want. So how did you guys, you all started initially with an initial itch. You wanted to build something, you wanted it, your friends wanted it. How did you guys manage validating that there was enough interest in the market to justify starting a company? Or did you learn down the line? Yeah.
There are days where I still don't think we're building the right product. That being said, we've got tons of people buying it, and they seem to be happy with it. So, I mean, you're never going to be able to make everyone happy. The best thing you do is just go talk to. And like when we first started our company, every person we spoke to said, go talk to people, go talk to people, go talk to people. We're like, but we're our own customer. We are like electrical devs. We know what we want. We're going to build it. But fine, we're on our ass. So okay, let's go talk to some people. And we went and talked to them. And like for our product, like we could be selling to hobbyists who like have a very low standard of what they're looking for, or companies that want like 32-layer boards that are running like 6 VGAs on them, and they're like, okay, well, no, that's not happening. Follow the advice that we should have followed even more. Go talk to people to the point where you're like, we did it and we stopped because we kept hearing the same things. And I think it's okay to stop when you start hearing the same things until you build the next version, and then you take that out and then you start asking again until you start hearing the same things. And do that constantly and incessantly. And that's what I'm currently doing right now. The rest of the team is focused on like current product, like marketing down, selling them, and all that, and I am talking to people about where we could be going from here and future applications of our current technology. And we're learning from that mistake. And it wasn't even a mistake. We did it. We just should have done it even more to the point of like nausea.
So you wish that you had done that before you even started, or when would have been ideal?
Always. Always. Like, you should, depending on like what your volume is, like if you're selling 40,000 units versus, a couple hundred units, like if you're selling a couple hundred units and your price point makes that possible, talk to a single new person every week, or 10 new people every week. If you're 40,000 people, I mean, that's way more difficult than how you talk to like 500 people every week. But maybe you found a way to it. So.
No, I mean, this is the interesting. Are we supposed to go in order? Are there rules, or doesn't matter? I mean, so there's two things I want to say. First, I want to have Flip and then respond to this because we'll get to that. The second one I want to say is basically like you really don't know unless you try to figure out like what constitutes as the right product, right? If you're trying to build something that's like super mega scale, I mean, the cool thing about everybody up here, and I know most of you, and the thing is like, with their own essentially personal projects, it's things that we actually really excited about. If we wanted to make, because if we wanted to make like a shit ton of money, there's a lot easier ways than the things that we do. There's higher margin ways, easier to fundraise, easier to sell. So it's interesting that it's very personal to us, like what's the right thing. I'm the annual gift camera guy, that's absurd. And to that point, sometimes to the person that's making it, it feels perfect to you, and to people that you would think would know something about it, they tell you it's a completely terrible idea. I remember you called me on Skype one time when you were still in HAX. I still remember this to this day. And because like I was the guy to call. You had a camera thing, like we had all kinds of conversations about what happened with the photos and all these interesting things that would happen with photography. If you could just get enough people to buy the hardware, and I remember he was like, well, what are you thinking? I was like, don't make a phone case. Phone cases are a bad idea. We talked about that. Like, that's lame. That's not the point. Like, and you realize, I don't know how did you listen to me say, I knew there was no way I could convince you, right? And sure enough, like, you're the one that's getting to do the fun stuff with photography, and I made computers because you didn't listen to me. That's awesome.
I think I would have listened to you after that. I would have done anything after that.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. I hate everything. Sometimes that happens. Yeah.
But you made a point. I mean, at the beginning, there were only 2 people that considered the case was Michael that could print pictures, and it was unfortunately not me and my co-founder. So we did it, and we are not hardware engineers. Not at all. I think among all the people here with these skills in hardware. But we built something that was working, and then we got to HAX, and then we got a lot more people to test on. And we were doing that every week. You guys will keep on providing feedback, even though like, we were not listening to you every week, but you were kind enough to keep on pushing us to these things. And
so that was increasing on the project, but what was it that gave you that the conviction when people were telling you like, hey, don't build a case? Because we helped you with make your best a case, but you made the decision to build that product.
Everyone was saying like, don't go, like, do something that is for Bluetooth and like it's not a case basically. Everybody's saying anyway, your print is too big to be called a case, so it's not gonna work. I remember, let's be honest. But I don't know, we're kind of stubborn people, and that's the French way, I would say. And we just did it.
I should say, this is still one of my favorite stories, and every time Cyril and I talk about it, like, I have to own up and take the shit for it, right? It's like, it's so awesome. Because if we had switched roles, and we've been like, don't make an animated gift camera. I would have been like, no, I'm making an animated gift camera, I don't care. And it's awesome. I'm so happy the way it worked out.
The gift camera and a case that print pictures, like, which one would win?
They're both kind of crazy.
Dave, what was your first point? You said you had 2 points.
The second point was that, like, yeah, are you trying to start a, like, $500 billion company? Like, yes, maybe you should ask every single person in the world and try and validate the market and go through the process of customer discovery and get your Steve Blank on, and that's awesome. And there are a lot of products we can do that. But hardware, we have such long lead times, a lot of it's got to go with the gut. And you've got to really feel like, I think I know something about this. And like, there's so much failure up here. Like, I'm speaking for everyone who disagree with me, but like we have failed so many times in so many different ways, and it's like this sort of weird walk that we've gotten to, where you know more each time, and you're willing to take a bigger risk each time and a bigger jump each time. So I think it's so hard. Like,
yeah.
I wish there were a prescription.
I think the moral of today's panel is going to be, this is the way to do it, except for the 99% of the time when it's not the way to do it. And yeah, just deal with it.
So Ian, you have a great experience in this of probably all the companies. You guys have hit serious product market fit, but you iterated along the way. So what was your particular story around changing the product as you went along?
Yeah, I mean, so we started, like I said, with just phone control of physical things, and we generated sort of this list of probably 100 different things that we can control. we sort of narrowed it down to 4, and it was basically a combination of just things that got us excited, and then just talking to the people that were coming through the TechStars program, and just friends, and then we were at the bar, just kind of throwing different ideas out and see how people responded. Basically those 4 ideas, and we had talked about them a lot. One of them was hotel door locks, one was like a wall outlet that you could plug it into your wall socket and put a lamp into it. It would be super easy to control that with your phone. We had sort of a platform idea with making like a reference design and sort of like an IoT platform. And then Spirit, which is super, super weird and crazy. And we just could not decide which one of these ideas we wanted to do. And a lot of the mentors and stuff that came through TechStars travel a lot. Everybody liked the hotel door lock idea, and it sounded like a better, more solid business than robot walls. we ended up having a meeting with Brad Feld from Founder Group, and we printed out 4 pieces of paper, and we went into the meeting. We only had 15 minutes with them, and each piece of paper was each of the 4 ideas. And he just immediately just took the platform one and just threw it on the floor. He's like, you can't do that, that's crazy. Mainly because, we were more technical founders, and that would have been more of a business plan. He's like, you guys need to build an end product. And then he was like, all right, gun to your head right now. If you had to pick out of these 3, which would you do? I'm like, well, we had to pick the robot ball. It just sounded so fun. He's like, all right, do that. That was our meeting. and kind of thinking back, years later, looking at some of those other ideas, the wall outlet one, Belkin has done that. Other now, home automation companies have built that. And they're viable companies on that product. And I know Marriott and Sheraton's and some other hotels are now putting smart locks in their hotels. So that was also a valid business, a valid product. So I think once you sort of drill down that deep, and maybe can't decide between a few ideas, they're probably all good ideas. You just pick the one that you're most passionate about.
I venture to say that almost the idea doesn't really matter that much. You sort of just pick a direction and just go. Because it sounds to me like you could be up here as the Suro guy, or the Limbo guy, or the Locatron guy. It's kind of like you were working on this confluence of cool things. You're talking about, can we control physical stuff with our phone? What happens then? And our whole thing was man, we are sick of screens. It'd be really awesome if the objects could behave like computers. We just said, picked a direction, and we love chaos, and we went with it. And it turned out that it was that core idea that turned into something else that was bigger. It's weird. It's you really don't know. I mean, if you get the people together and you're working, all of us are working on really things that we think are fun. I imagine we all work an incredible amount, but it's this is not really work, the stuff that we do.
Are you saying that when you start, you have an idea, but you don't know where it's going to go?
I'm going to answer to that. Everyone here is listening. Don't build platforms. A platform is not something that you build. A platform is emergent. It is something that happens. It describes something that has happened when you have built a product like we're talking about that has fit. This guy could make remote controls for anything now, because he's got millions of robot balls going everywhere. That's a platform. You cannot start and build a platform. Take whatever the thing that's exciting about that platform, make a physical manifestation of that thing, do that. But yeah, I would agree with you. It doesn't matter, it's pretty direction. It's going to change if it doesn't work, or you go out of business.
And that's probably the advice that we all got early on, was to land and expand, right? The going deep, making sure that you do one thing really, really well, and then using that as the basis to go on. So, cool. So since this is a hardware event, it is fun to follow your passion, but in hardware things can actually explode, and it's hard to set up. There are small moving parts. So one thing that everyone in the panel has in common is that everyone here has gone to China. So in the case of the 3 HAX companies, that meant spending 4 months in China. In the case of you spent a fair amount of time there. You set up your manufacturing. How did that influence your product development, and how did it influence the company? What that you wouldn't have gotten here?
So for us, when we got to HAX, when we got accepted, the first time we visited the factory was like astonished. Like, I finally understood that I didn't know anything about building a product. Because then you realize that in fact there's molds that you need to build, do plastic injection, that is, you use a plastic and then you need to be honest, everything like that. That's, you understand the cost that are behind it, and you understand why more startups fail. That's what you realize. It's not like how to succeed, but like what are the ways you can fail building a power startup. That's what I realized when I was in Shenzhen, probably. Then it's more about the environment, the fact that it's becoming more and more the silicon valley for hardware startups, and that's the place to be when you want to build a product. Those are the two things that I learned from there.
Yeah, I guess I probably spent over 2 years since I started the company in China. Actually just got back Sunday night from another trip. I think it's really inspiring being over there, especially certain areas and the electronics markets, and this is sort of a candy store for people that build hardware. I was just come back with like bags full of random parts and stuff that I probably would never use, but I definitely see something and get inspired, and it might have definitely inspired some of our prototypes. And it's cool working with our factory too. I mean, different CMs are totally different, and we're lucky to have a CM that's really good, and the GM of our factory is super awesome, and even so BB-8. So about 4 or 5 months before we learned about the BB-8 character while we were at the Techstars Disney Accelerator, he sent me this random video. Our GM of our factory in China was Squirrel with a hat driving around. He's like, yeah, maybe you could like put some accessories on it, or like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, that's kind of cool. We kind of, we replicated it in our office, and the magnets are kind of expensive. We're like, no, I don't know if people are going to buy hats for those heroes. So the second we saw the picture of BB-8 and Bob Iger, business showed us this picture, and we were like, oh, we know how to do that. Yeah, so some of the people, even at the CMs in China, have contributed to product ideas and features in our products.
And I would buy hats for the screen. Actually, when this came out, I think Richard's in the audience. We wanted it so bad, we actually invested in like Craigslist. I think I paid like $300 for the first one that I got. So, good on the hats. Yeah, I mean, who's been to China here? Show of hands. That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, you can't build hardware and sell it at scale unless you're in China. It's really not possible. It's a different way of thinking about the problem. It's a different way of thinking about how you source components. You have to understand how to eat the food if you're not familiar with it. That's a huge thing we have to do. But what you're saying is really true. That like we still go to the markets, and the first question we always ask people when we get back is, "What did you get in the markets?" Right? It's like, "What'd you get?" Like, "Oh, is it the LEDs or is it the?" So you can also really think, hey, you go to the markets, and this to me, I got sort of fell in love with Shenzhen through Bunny's blog when he started doing those tours. It's one of the reasons we went to HAX. We're like, maybe I'm going to gift cameras. That might be a thing, but we just convinced them to be a thing. I mean, if that's not, we still get to go to Shenzhen, and that would be awesome. Is that when you start going to the markets every 6 months, it changes all the time. And you can see where the trends are going to be in the US when they're in the Shenzhen markets. I don't know if you guys saw this, but I remember when hoverboards were starting to show up in the markets, and when the guys were hawking drones in Washington at the main plaza. It was like really strange. And every time I went, it was something different. Apparently this time it's all VR headsets. It's like what Gus told me when he came back, lots of VR stuff. Very strange, but yeah, you gotta go. It's a totally different way of thinking about this problem, and you can't do it without understanding it.
They're really good at making stuff cheap. So I always go there and just try to see what the new trends are. And the last one was lots of wearables. And we're working on our new product, which is the Force Band. It's a wearable, and it gives you the power to trying to get people to power the force. You can connect the BB-8, and you can do different gestures. BB-8 around. There's some other game code we're building in. But just sort of looking, I don't know if you publicly announced price points and stuff like that.
You're telling me that you're now at scale, and your original idea was to remote control stuff with your phone, and you're building a Star Wars The Force bracelet. Are we going to be able to control everything with the Force?
I hope so. We were kind of joking around at lunch with a buddy, like, you know, hopefully this thing is open, and you know, somebody might be able to control their Tesla or something like that. You could like force push your Tesla. But yeah, I found a smartwatch at the Shenzhen market, and this watch was $20 at the store. And I might have been able to like negotiate lower. So ours doesn't like even have a touchscreen, but this thing has like a nice touchscreen, sound, microphone, camera, haptic. It has a pedometer, so it has like some sort of accelerometer, and it can take a SIM card. And you can make calls on YouTube for $20.
I'm just sitting here really intently listening, and I thought you were wearing an Apple Watch, and I was like, actually kind of judging you for it. I was kind of like, it's an Apple Watch, like that. What is it? I don't understand. So you totally fooled me from this distance. That's totally wild.
This one is the Apple Watch, but they did have a different version that looked exactly like the Apple Watch. It also had the camera. So I thought I wanted to bring back our engineers to get inspiration for our products.
So that actually brings up a really good point, which is IP. So anyone you speak to, they talk about, you know, great, you can build in China, it's cheaper, but there's tons of knockoffs. When we were there, actually, we saw the iPhone 6 come out like 2 months, complete replica, 2 months before it was available here, we could it looks like. So how do you guys think about that when you're building a product? How do you design around that?
China is really good at commoditizing things to build something that can't be commoditized. So I mean, like in Dave's case, he's building a community around, I think, like, you've got a ton of people that are very passionate about your product.
I'm open to new ideas if you got any. You've got a good one, let me know.
I mean, in our case, we've got material science that is very difficult to know about. That I don't think anybody in China would be able to knock off some nanoparticle thing just because of that. And on top of that, we are building community and all that. It's basically, you got to build companies that are like, you got to build companies that are beyond hardware. So a lot of them are like, okay, so like, where's the software element? I mean, for us, I mean, we have software, but that's never going to be our end goal. We're going to build a company based on amazing hardware, amazing material science, amazing user experience, and a community that believes in those things as the value. But like Dave said, we've got some ridiculous software, ridiculous community, and things like that. And yeah, hardware can be knocked off. Don't build something that can be knocked off.
So just going back to the fact that you can find the iPhone 6 2 months before, not so long ago, because we are making a build for iPhones also, and Apple is like, no, if you want to spec something, you you have to wait the date that the product is going to be launched. So it's not really easy. But for the iPhone 6 it was easier because we were in China and we could get our hands on the product 2 months before. And this time it was a little bit the same for the iPhone SE that just came out, except that we got to our contacts in China and they told us that nobody tried to copy it because it wouldn't be successful. So at that time it didn't work. We are hoping the iPhone 7 Chinese people are going to copy it and try to bring it to market earlier in the Apple market. But it's both a threat and also an opportunity for you to hear more about what the market is doing and what they're going to be building or not. But then I would agree with Alvaro that they can copy anything, they can copy Apple, they can copy any brand as fast as they want. And they will do it if you become successful enough. Actually, we were joking about that, but once you see your product the electronic market in Shenzhen, that means that you're pretty successful. That's terrifying.
So you should be worried if they're not knocking it off?
if they do it, it's not really pleasing at first, but it's also like, yeah, some people spend a lot of time and money just to copy your product and put a fake one on the market. And then, obviously, to prevent that from happening or to actually counteract a little bit that, you need to have like software or like something else that makes your hardware even more valuable than just the material of it, and the fact that it's something physical. That's pretty much what you need to do, is focus have something that makes your hardware more important than what it is.
So community and software, what else?
Yeah, there's definitely community, definitely complexity of your product. So like with Sphero, we've definitely had a couple knockoffs. One was called Swally. You can look it up online. They have a really addictive song in their video. But a lot of their images and stuff are like our marketing photos that they like photoshopped out the Sphero logo and put in like a little Swally logo. But like mechanically, it's identical. Like they literally cut a screw open and measured everything and used all the same parts. But the software and the firmware inside of it is inside of the screw and the BB-8. It's incredibly complicated. So while it mechanically is the same, it doesn't function very well. And definitely the last two is brand, which is maybe good and bad, or maybe some people maybe want the Apple Watch, and some people maybe that's necessarily a bad thing. The branding one. Yeah, a lot of people they don't want the knockoff Apple Watch, they want the real one.
For the record, I was on stage last year being interviewed by Ben, a similar event, and I was wearing an Apple Watch at the time. I just forgot to charge it, so it's a different conversation we can have offline. So my product that we make, this thing is open source. Otto was open source. And then what Clement said, like, if your product's not being copied, you're doing something wrong. The circuit board printer and the incredibly precise robot arm, that shit's not going to get copied. The stuff that you guys do is mind-bogglingly complex. The stuff that we do is mind-bogglingly complex, but it can actually be cloned very, very easily. But no one's done it. Right? I'm making 50,000 computers a month. Right? It's the world's first $9 computer. It's everywhere, and no one is copying it. I want someone to copy the thing. In fact, I give the designs away for free on my website, and no one copies them. Why? Well, anyone can make chip. You can probably figure out a way. It's an 8-layer PCB, 6 layers for the new ones. So soon, right? Or a really giant one, maybe. But why is that happening? Well, they can copy it, but they can't make it for the same price. Because there are parts of the business that allow it to be functional really only at scale. And I would advise against doing this. We did this because we knew we needed to solve this problem around the cost of the hardware. But when I buy 500,000 pieces of NAND or 500,000 pieces of DRAM, like, you're not going to be able to touch my price unless you buy more. And then if you're doing something of strategic significance to anyone, if it's Disney, if you're talking about Zinc, right? If you're talking about maybe DigiKey for you guys, right? There's an interesting thing where you can get preferential pricing. There are no rules in this kind of business. And basically, you go to these companies and say, look, I want to create this thing. Is there some way that you can help me do it? And that I actually can maintain the market that I create. And so I buy my components at a price way lower than anyone else. And even, I actually legally can't tell you what the price is, and there's lots of speculation online about, oh, this thing costs like $40 to make, and it's like, I can tell you it costs $40 to make, but there's a reason no one's copying it. Because no one can make it for the price, because the supply chain that we created, the business relationships that we have, mean that our competitive advantage is actually that. And I'd be curious to hear about, and probably honestly you can't even talk about Disney, like, this is the better product. It was $149, right, launched, and then there's like a Toy Biz one or a Wowie one that's like way too big and like $79. How did that happen? And like that's effectively being like copied with a license. You guys still want it in the end, but again, you're not dead. You're doing better.
yeah, I probably can't talk too much about that, but yeah, I mean, we wanted to create a really high quality product and make the most authentic BB-8 that we possibly could, and people like that. You know, there's lots of comparisons online, and yeah, people wanted to pay to have the real BB-8.
Yeah, so we talked about software, we talked about community, we talked about supply chain as ways of setting up barriers to entry. I think another one that should be discussed is distribution. And then, simply put, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you're selling B2B, I think most, like, you guys are all like B2C high volume stuff, we're sort of somewhere in the middle, but if you're selling high value products, nobody's gonna, Shenzhen Electronics Market stall vendor is gonna copy that and try to take over your contracts that are tens of thousands of dollars because nobody's gonna want to do business with them. So I don't exactly what my point is here, but I'm just thinking if you're in the B2B space, it's probably a strong thing in not basically because of how you set up distribution. A barrier standing, find your barrier, set it up. Bottom line.
So let's talk a little bit about the setting up the supply chain, because as anyone here is building a product, initially you figure out how to build it, you'll have to figure out how to build one of them, then 10, then 100, maybe 1,000, maybe hundreds of thousands. So how did you guys get started working with manufacturers? Did you go straight to a CM and let them figure everything out for you? Or did you have to set up your own supply chain? What was that process like for you?
That's why also HAX is great, is that you get to understand more about manufacturers, and you understand that there's not one type of manufacturer, but multiple types. And each manufacturer is going to be bringing different values. Some are going to do everything from the product development and bring the product and actually build it, and now you also set the logistics and everything. But we can do a lot more than just taking your bomb and building a product based on schematics and everything that you get. So it depends on what your skills are and what you want to do internally, what you want to give to that manufacturer, and how confident you are that they can build the right product for you. For us, we decided to go with a manufacturer that for the first product that we did, a manufacturer that could do a lot more than just building the product. They helped us improve the prototypes that we had, find the right suppliers, manage the relationship with the suppliers. That's hard because that means that we're kind of lying to them, that we're building values for us, but sometimes it's the best way to get to market as fast as possible and get a good quality product, and then you learn from that manufacturer and you build a second product with a different manufacturer, and you let you kind of internalize a little bit more of the idea that you have.
Yeah, I would say it's getting a lot easier. CMs are starting to work with more startup companies and understand what we're looking for, and maybe what new startup companies, they're offering more help to startup companies to get their product to market. So, I mean, for us, it was mostly just talking to other hardware companies and asking them what they were doing, or what CMs they were using, and different advice at different stages, and then basically me just spending lots of time in China and just figuring it out. It's really not that hard, I would say, if you're willing to especially spend time in China and yeah, just ask for help.
Yeah, so interestingly, supply chain for us is probably the most important part of our business, and it's funny that I'm saying this out loud because I go through airports all the time, like you guys do, and there are those weird like Accenture ads, and it's like powering your global supply chain, and I'm like, who are those for? And then now I'm walking through airports, and I'm like, oh, that's for me. I actually could use some ERP. That'd be really rad. I'm really excited about it. I'm really bullish on enterprise software right now because of that. But no, it's actually like how you make something, like how it actually gets made, how the supply chain works is the product from our perspective. What we do is we're actively trying to take advantage of the scale of the manufacturing in Shenzhen to create things that weren't possible before. We're trying to push the limits of what a price of a product can be, right? It's like pocket chip is a screen, a keyboard, a case, and a computer, and a battery, and of course all the software, and it's $49. And I'll tell you, we make money on this. Like, we do. I'm quite excited to sell as many pocket chips as I can, because it's really fun, and it's our highest margin thing, pretty much, that it's all on. And the only way that you can do this is like you have to design the products for that supply chain. You have to understand the supply chain. Like, it's very interesting that even if you can see it, you can see anything about it. Like, you guys make the clear one, which I really love, and there's some hidden secrets here that you don't know. Like how do we select the inductors? And like actually, if you use the inductors that you get from the recommended supplier, the power supply buzzes, but you know that if you call the guy at that company and you tell him, hey, I want the special ones, that's not a part number, they'll be potted, and so the actual inductors will be higher quality. That's not a part number. It's like really, really weird stuff. But yeah, I mean, I would ask you offline for you're asking a question you can't answer, so I don't want to throw you in the bus on this one. But like, our supply chain is really complicated. But if you don't think it's a problem, it means I need to learn what you're doing, because for us it's like we have 90 discrete suppliers plus. But you'll notice I'm very I lack sort of media training in a lot of ways. But you'll never hear me mention the name of a single supplier. Right? I'm pretty disciplined about that. Not because I don't want to help people out, or I don't want them to be copied. It's because I don't want anything to put that at risk. It is the most important thing that we have. And I don't like, oh, that guy has a great deal of those things. Then he's going to get more business, and then he's going to turn my business away, and then I have a huge problem. So
I would say in our case, like most of our components are supplied by our CM. I mean, we source maybe four components inside Squirrel that we consign to our CM, and we're negotiating pricing and things like that directly with that supplier. Yeah, I mean, our CM in China is good about like pretty much every other part, like the plastics, machining. We've been very good about finding suppliers for those things, and they're managing those relationships. So
that's a really great point, managing relationships. What a lot of people don't necessarily know is how relationship-driven any kind of manufacturing is. When you go to a factory, it takes time for them to trust you as much as for you to trust them, and to make sure that they have a clean supply chain. And so would you speak to how you went about setting up that relationship in the first place? So in terms of like, finding components, you can optimize on that, but it's the relationship at the core that can really make or break you in manufacturing. So what did you do to ensure that it worked out well?
I guess I thought, like, initially, like before I'd even gone to China, I thought that they were just like this company that you hired to like build your thing. And it was probably like the first week of working with our CM, and I was like, sent them an email like, hey, can you guys like do this stuff? And, like this long list of things, and they emailed back and they were like, actually, we might not want to work with you guys anymore. Like, you just seem like a pain in the ass. And I very quickly realized that it's very much a partnership with your CM. And ever since then, we basically treat them as an extension of our own team. Just collaborating on the product and utilizing their engineers and our engineers, and really working together to solve the problems. And it's definitely very much a partnership and a very close relationship with our CM. I was just over there last week, and our GM and the guy from the factory were there, and I spent hours with them just walking around CES Asia, and just that relationship is really important.
I think the relationship is really the key with the manufacturer. At the beginning, you kind of see them as a contractor, or you feel like you're taking some of the money because they're making their product, but you don't know if you can trust them in terms of pricing, etc. But if you are thinking like that, you've got everything wrong, and you're the best has to fail, actually. You need to see them as kind of an investor, because that's what they're doing. They're investing their plan, they're investing in their space because they don't have that many manufacturing lines. So if they're choosing your product, it must be because they're believing in the business that you are building and that's where you're bringing them. So once you realize that, you start trusting them, which doesn't mean that you shouldn't control what they're doing. But once you start trusting them and trying to do the best out of that relationship, that's when you have good things that are happening and they're actually bringing a lot of business to you. But it's a lot of love and hate relationship because yes, they are personal for your business, meaning that if you need them, but you also know that you don't control everything that is happening in that factory, no matter what you do. So that's also frightening a little bit.
I'd say that trust is really important as well. Like we also for quite a while didn't really share a lot of things about our software, and it was kind of a black box to them. It was sort of anything we told them was on the very, very need to know. Like, why are you asking that? It took us a while to sort of build that trust with their CM, and I wouldn't say just like any manufacturer out there should be completely open with them, because I've definitely been to CMs where they're building like the actual product in one building, and then you walk to the other building and they're building like the knockoff version of it. But once you sort of pick the right CM and maybe you talk to other startup companies, they can talk to me and ask me who our CM was. I would be definitely more open with them, and that definitely helps in that collaboration with building the product. And they'll know all of their good suggestions when they understand the product better.
This is really fascinating for me because the transition that we've made from making just a bona fide product in a small quantity where there's no CDM that would take us on kind of thing, and then we skipped the level where we're now we have to, basically the CMs don't understand what we make, right? That's never been made before. And so I find myself, the same thing you guys are saying, what's the expression there? I'm going to mince the Mandarin here, but the guangxi, right? The relationship, right? And then how much baiju, we've all had the factory meetings with super hammered. I actually have a terrible drum call. I can take maybe 3 shots of baiju and then I'm done.
That is essentially
should get baiju.
Yeah, it's
you have to get a relationship.
It's a big deal. And so the thing is you really do have to trust the factories that you work with. We should make a distinction, right? It's kind of an inside baseball game, this conversation, which is really fascinating. I want to get all the information from all of you at once. But there's a distinction between the contract manufacturer and then your suppliers who give the components, and the distinction between where do the components come from, right? So what you guys are saying that your CM does the sourcing for you, but then the other question is what is the price? Is it vendor agreed price, right? There's a whole lot of organizational intelligence that the CMs can provide, because it's kind of like working with your attorney. Your attorney can't tell you that he's dealt with this exact situation before and tell you the client's names, but when you call panicked, he can tell you, look, you're going to be fine. I can't tell you why you're going to be fine, you're going to be fine. And that happens all the time. And the bigger CMs can do things that you can't even imagine. And the smaller ones will go so far out of their way to help you that it doesn't even feel like a business relationship. One of the larger manufacturers that we work with, we had a problem with our USB connectors that was causing SMT failure. So they were going through the machines to be made, the robots are putting them in, they're coming out sort of sideways. So if you've got an early chip, you might have a little sideways USB connector, I'm sorry. They actually, without telling us, spun up a separate production line to make 100,000 USB connectors that they designed on their own. And then just shipped it to us and said, we fixed it. That's incredible. We couldn't figure out how to do it. How did you do it? Matter of fact, once it was emailed, we just made a USB connector. Right? And it's you need it, there's this weird stuff that happens. So, yes, get to know the factory, stay in the factory, get to know the actual people working on the line, and let them know what the product is. That makes a huge difference.
Awesome. So we have about 15 minutes left. We're going to do some Q&A. But one thing that's particularly special about this group of people that you have up here is that they've had very successful either pre-order campaigns or Kickstarter or pre-orders. And so I think it'd be remiss to not ask you how you did that. So if you could give, I guess, a brief overview of what you thought was the single biggest impact in making, in increasing your either Kickstarter or your pre-order campaign.
So for us, it was two things. First one was I looked at everybody else that was in our space that had launched on that platform, and I dissected their campaigns to the point where I knew more about them than they knew. And like any comment that was made by anybody on Kickstarter, on any article, I knew what they were talking about, and basically molded our campaign to be a direct answer to any question people could ever have about our product. So it was a custom-made campaign for the question that would be asked, and for pledge levels and stretch goals and video content and all that. The second thing is day one is the most important day for a campaign, in my opinion, and all of the success that you're going to get from day one has to be brought by yourself. You have to bring your audience with you. And so we had gone to events for many, many years, been covering articles for many years, and then about a month before we launched our campaign, that was when we launched TechCrunch Hardware Battlefield. We were covering a whole bunch of things at CES, and our mail was skyrocketed, not anywhere near this guy's mailing list, which was it. Top level, but then basically day one, or a week before our campaign, we said, hey everybody, it's happening in a week. The day before the campaign, we said, hey everybody, tomorrow morning, and then that was like, all right, go. And we started our campaign, we refreshed the page, and we were already sold out of early bird units.
I feel like just giving one advice would be a lot better. I could go on and on about Kickstarter campaigns. I'm a huge Kickstarter geek, and a lot of tricks and things that can work. So picking just one is going to be really hard, but you can come to me after. So we have a huge mailing list. That's true.
How big is your mailing list?
How we made that mailing list. It was really something we didn't anticipate. We're actually at HAX Demoday, and journalists from TechCrunch that became a good friend actually came to us and said, hey, that's a nice piece of hardware that we're doing. Why don't you come and the office and let's see what we can do. We went to TechCrunch in San Francisco, and we loved the break. They said, okay, let's do a video. We did a big video. It took us 30 days to do it, and they pushed it down. The following week, the video went crazy. I think it's the second most video of TechCrunch of 2013, right after the iPhone 6. That's the level. At that time, we weren't ready at all. We just had a website with emails, so that's how we got to 55,000 emails going to before we started. So that was great. Also, what happened is that a lot of journalists contacted us because they wanted to do another interview, and at that point we were saying no. Which is hard, like when you have a lot of interesting journalists like CNN, colleagues that are coming to you and saying, what would be an interview with you? And you have to say, that's not going to happen. You have to do it because then you realize that if you are covered way too much before your campaign, we're not going to cover you after once you launch, and we need that coverage right at the time that you launch. Like Howard said, the beginning of the campaign is the most important. So building that mailing list was all we needed, and relationship with the journalists is the second great thing that happened, but we didn't use that card pretty much before the campaign, so we kept it. And actually all of them covered us on the call to film. So that's probably what happened. So there's probably no advice in what I said, because that was all unfortunate. The advice is plan ahead, make sure that you have 3 months before your campaign, you prepare everything in terms of all the materials that you will need, because you won't have time. If you believe that you will have time to create photos or text and updates during the Kickstarter campaign, that's make sure you prepare everything ahead and build a mailing list and build a relationship with journalists before.
I I guess we've never done any sort of crowdfunding, so I guess just launching products, I would say my strategy personally is just to make sure we have the best marketing people in the world. Just overall in the company, like at one point, a long time ago, I owned 100% of the company, and I'd given up most of the company to bring in the best people from the team, from the business side, and the marketing side, and the sales side, and investors. So I guess my suggestion there is just don't be afraid to, I don't know, I was just sort of, I just wanted to go big, so I was willing to give up a lot of the company, so get people excited and bring in amazing people into your companies.
Yeah, I mean, the hat's done. All right. So the crowdfunding discussion, right? Like, there's some hardcore knowledge up here about crowdfunding. It's kind of like watching a sport and then watching an analysis show if you're not into that sport. So like, people look at like American football, right? And you're like, it's a game played by people, and there's not a lot of thought that goes into it. What you don't see before the game is like tons of planning, people studying video, all of the plays, all of the practice. All you see is like the touchdowns and the highlights. And at the same time, like in the crowdfunding world, it's like we spend a ridiculous amount of time learning about what the dynamics of these things were, tracking those products. I mean, I remember hearing again about your email list, and I was just like, that is crazy, right? It's like, if you can figure that out, it's an enormous strategic advantage to get something before the game. We didn't have that, right? And so I would say also up front, like, don't take crowdfunding advice from me, right? When you say $9 computer, it's completely absurd. And all you have to do is make good on it and actually show it working and ship it to people, and then you're fine. But generally making claims that could be perceived as totally outrageous is not a great way to do it. I would say that you have to really understand how to talk about your product, right? I mean, you could take Chip, the world's first $9 computer, and you could say it is a developer tool for the future of IoT products, or a developer tool for smart devices, or a platform where it's steering the computers and products. All these, they're all true, right? But they don't really cut to the core of why this thing is awesome. And part of that is this weird walkabout, an existential crisis of like, who am I? Why did I make this? Why will this matter to people? Why are they going to care? And sometimes you can't, like you're saying, like, I could go alone. Like, I called a close friend of mine who had not really been in the consumer electronics business to help. I knew something was wrong. All we knew was that we're going to call it the world's first $1 million computer. Like, there was a totally different version of history where there was no pocket chip, right? There was actually like a series of weird like kits you could buy, and you could build your own stuff. And, like, we did a sort of combination of talking to people and saying like, this is a $9 computer, what do you think of it? And they're like, where's the screen, right? Well, where's the screen led to this 40-day crazy process of designing pocket chip, simply just so that we could have functional messaging for our product. Our biggest concern was that people wouldn't understand what we did. And like, you guys are in a great spot. The thing is, it's super fun. You can see how it works. It's easy to demonstrate. Like the robot arm, again, you can demonstrate it. It's at a price that no one's ever seen before. Printing the circuit boards, I want that so bad. I want it really bad. And then Clint, like you're like the demo king in terms of you don't really explain it. Like this is the camera and the photo comes out. Like we didn't really have that luxury. Like our thing is a PCB. It sits there and does nothing. And so we had to find a way to show people like, yeah, it does stuff for real. And like. Then we went to incredible lengths, like actually building an entire product that we're now shipping. This part that's like, oh, that was probably a bad idea, creating an entire line of product just so we could have a believable story and people would understand it. But it was essential. It was the thing that got us. The product design in 40 days helped the messaging. It made us an additional $1 million on the campaign, and it let people understand like why it would matter. And you have to really, really think about that hard before you get into this crowdfunding.
So storytelling, positioning, preparation, leveraging media, and then bringing in the best people. Yeah, easy.
Yeah, Liz.
All right, so we have a little bit of time for Q&A. Does anyone have questions? And we have an extra microphone. Thank you.
What's your name?
Hi,
Hi, my name is John. My question is, what would be your advice for navigating the world of radio and safety and other certifications required to sell into certain markets?
Everyone's passing the mic.
If anyone wants to start a company where we could just pay you a lot of money to just tell us what certifications we need and just take care of that, like, you would make so much money. Because it's a nightmare. Like, you find like one dude in some region that knows Japan and like induction charging. He doesn't know how to do like Bluetooth and stuff. So you gotta find the other dude in Japan that knows how to do the Bluetooth connection and that side of the certifications. And then you go to Europe, and now you gotta find like the 10 people that like one person knows Bluetooth, and again, the other person knows maybe knows parts of the induction charging. Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. Like for us, like our factory knows some of this stuff, especially around like toy safety and things like that. So they're pretty good with those certifications, but they don't know a lot of the RF certifications of the induction charging. And then you go to the test labs, like SGS or Intertech, and some of the people there will know a little bit more, but you got to talk to a lot of people to like, yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. Like it's horrible. So we've started in certain regions, like shipped to US and Canada, way back in our first products. Now we have to do global launches, but in the beginning we were really focused on certain regions and kind of took it one country at a time and tried to figure it out. Yeah, it's not simple. Like seriously, a company would make an incredible amount of money if we would pay them so much money just to like not even have to think about it.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the hardest parts, that and calculating that for Europe also is a pain, like everything related to taxes. But like those are the two things. But for certification, part of that was done by our manufacturer, so that was great. And again, we are only doing CE and FCC, which are the two most common. When you start trying to do for same thing for Japan or other, it's a pain. One of the most difficult part of certification for us was the MFI certification to make for iPhone. Don't do it for iPhone, but that's just stupid. You need to ship your products to a lab in Taiwan that is going to test it, and then Apple is going to do everything. And before they do that, which is probably going to take 2 months, your app is not going to be shipped on the App Store. So for us, when we actually started shipping our product last year in December, we couldn't release the app. We had to go through test flight and ship the app to every one of our customers because we weren't MFI certified, and so the app went on the App Store. So that was, I mean, they didn't know because they actually got to us and said, you are not allowed to use test flight for that. So fortunately enough, we got MFI certified right after, but that's a thing. MFI certification is the worst, definitely. So I think anticipation is the best for that, and making sure that you incorporate the delays that you need for certification in your timeline, incorporating manufacturing is the best way you can react because.
And how much time did you guys budget for your certifications?
So for most certification, I would say you probably need a month and once a half, depending on your skills and like probably the people. For MFI certification, you probably need double that.
Here's one thing that can just try to help with certifications and stuff is using modules or pre-certified things, which can help. Like our initial version 1 of Sphero used a Bluetooth module. So you still have to do an FCC TV cert, but it's not the whole cert. So, and then on actually certifications, like the power adapter. Huge nightmare, and you have to have like all the different plugs for all the different countries, and the power adapter is really hard to get certified in all the different countries. So it's one of the reasons starting with Ollie and BB8, we actually we just assume like people have enough like wall to USB adapters by now that we just don't include it. And it's mainly because it's such a nightmare to get that approved. So if you have a device, like, if you can make it like USB powered, that makes it a lot easier. Using modules makes it easier.
So try to use pre-certified stuff as much as possible. Let's go to, is there another question? Yeah.
I'm in the very, very early stages of getting my own hardware startup together, and I'm currently looking for non-technical co-founders. I've got a technical background myself, and I want to know, how did you guys meet your either non-technical co-founders, your early business, marketing, sales type people? What did you do? How did you meet them? And how did you know they were the right fit?
I mean, so I have a technical background, but I'm the non-technical co-founder. I think they just didn't trust me to build things, so they said, leave us alone and go sell this. I think it's the same, like whether you're looking for technical or non-technical, the only thing you can do is just get out there and talk to people. I was blessed because the people I started this company with were friends of mine that we had been in school together, we had lived together, we worked together. And so not everybody has that option, but literally like take your idea, go to events like this, talk to every single person and be like, hey, this is what I'm working on. We like, if that's something you're interested in, let's talk more about it. I don't jump into that with them right away. There's a long vetting cycle you should go through, but you're not going to find anybody if you're not talking to them.
Yeah, so me and my co-founders were both engineers, but even if you're two engineers, you're probably going to lack some of the skills that are required for building the proof. I mean, you need mechanical, industrial design, electrical engineering, firmware, etc. It's just massive people, so it's more about finding people that you respect a lot, people that actually program, and that are as passionate as you to build what you want to build. And then after it's just adding more people that completes this first set of people that you have, and that's as passionate as that you would still respect.
For us, it was in Techstars. So the way Techstars works is the first month is sort of this mentor month, mentor madness, and you meet a lot of people, and the idea is you have a lot of sort of 15 to 30 minute meetings with people, and you sort of come out in a month picking a couple that you have a good, they're interested in your company, and we were interested in them as a mentor. So in Techstars, the first time, one of our lead mentors ended up being this guy, Paul Bavarian, who started 7 companies. He took one of his companies public, and he would just kind of come in like a few days a week and give us advice, and we got to know him really well. And at the end of the program, right after our demo day, we were sort of like, hey, you're like really experienced CEO. You want to like be our CEO? I think he was sort of thinking the same thing, and he ended up joining as our CEO, and he's still our CEO. So I guess for us it was through the accelerator program, and I've also seen it happen is like startup companies asking somebody to be an advisor, and they get to know each other well. And over time, maybe that business person leaves their job and joins the startup. Definitely seen that several times as well.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing I'll say is you're asking the right question, because this is not something I recommend doing alone. It can be done alone. It's really, really fun. You can do it by yourself. I've started things on my own, and it's much, much better to have someone along with you, because there are days when things don't go well, and they're having a great day, and you're having a bad day. It's really essential when the fate of the company is on the line. And when there were just 3 of us in a garage with a camera, if there had just been 2 of us, you're basically one fight away from, oh well, we're not doing cameras anymore. Right? So, I mean, the great news is that the companies fail because they give up, or the founders don't get along, or there is a book that you should read. It's called The Founder's Dilemma. It's really dry, it's really long, But it talks about these things, right? And there's a couple of different schools of thought. The first one is if you're married to a person, don't start a company with them. It's a real thing, people do it. It's incredible. The other one is don't start a company with your friends. I did that one. You're not supposed to do that either. The third one is you should be someone that you're acquainted with, and like maybe a friend of a friend, so you can trust them, and like they're interested in the same thing, and you respect them as these guys said. But like the truth is like you gotta kind of pick what kind of thing you're after, right? If you're just, you said it earlier, which is really awesome to hear, like, I wanted to go big, right? Which is like, that is a conscious decision, and you put things in place to do that. If that's what you're going after, and this book will crystallize that for you, it's very dry, it's worth it. You have to decide what your outcome is going to be. Because if you really just want to make stuff, and work with people you really enjoy being around, then you should do that, right? But if you're trying to build the fastest growing company in the history of consumer electronics, you may have to work with people who you don't like hanging out with. And that's something you gotta sort of decide on your own.
Cool, so we are out of time now. Oh, you want one more question? All right, we can do one more question.
Hi, my name is Dennis. I'm also going to I would like to know what are the things that you, in your timeline and your budget, that you didn't think about? What was the cost that you didn't plan for, or what was the thing in the production timeline that just made it delayed or more expensive than you thought? If it did. Maybe it was perfect, but I've never heard that before.
Well, I already say RFID certification, but that was a big one. Again, that's screwed a lot of things. Then things in terms of product development, I mean, certification, again, that's probably something. You need to understand that you need to test your product, and doing a few weeks, a few months worth of beta testing and receive feedback is always necessary. You feel like when you're under a little bit of rush, you feel like that's the easiest part that you can shrink up to a few days worth of beta testing. We did that. That was probably a mistake because we could have improved a lot of things by just doing a little bit more of beta testing and putting the project in the hands of a few tens of people or even 100 people before sending it to thousands of people. So beta testing it takes time, but you should do it.
So just give me a thumbs up if this is right. The question was, what are the things that have caused unexpected costs? That? Or unexpected time? Oh, okay. So one thing that comes to my mind right away is because it's something that I've been looking at our financials and it just been flabbergasting me recently is freight. So the cost of moving things, I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars we spend on that. Just getting stuff from one place to another, from China and our factories to here, and then we're paying customs and duties and all that. That is being something that's been on my mind, trying to figure out how to minimize that. The fact that you're a hardware company and before you commit to any one component, you have to buy that component from 5 different suppliers and test them all out and do your due diligence on validated component. That's something that software companies I think don't really need to do, and a lot of money just gets, and at times gets kind of washed away with just doing your due diligence on making sure you're using the right parts and working with the right factory. So I know that takes forever. If we talk about what adds unexpected time, it's okay, we need to modify our aluminum extrusion, and it's going to be looking like this. Let's go find a factory that can do it, and then you're shopping around for factories, and one of them says they can do it, and they're excellent, go make it, and then they come back, and it's garbage, and you're like, why is it? It's oh, well, we actually couldn't do it, we lied to you, and it's oh, well, don't do that. Yeah.
And then the other cost of time, right? The months it took to do that.
Some things like testing will take a while, but you can also make business decisions to shorten that time. You can't start your production before all your certifications are done. After doing pre-scans and stuff, if you feel comfortable. We have our first time
you know, first product, just trying to figure stuff out. I mean, tooling, you know, it just takes 3 months to make a tool. That can be a lot of time and cost. I mean, those tools can add up. When we start to look at all the different mechanical pieces, it will definitely be quite expensive. There's lots of things like, you know, we learned a lot of lessons around testing, just making sure that you really, there's a lot, you can convince yourself to skip a lot of testing when you're like in the compressed timelines, and I would highly recommend not doing that. We run into issues like where we didn't fully test things and it ended up, you know, leading to big delays later on and trying to, you know, like we had one issue where we literally had the factory had, like, these things were solvent bonded closed, and this plastic is like essentially one sphere. So they had to devise this whole thing and cut open 19,000 spheros and rework like 0603 surface mount parts, like 7 parts on our PCBs, and then reassemble everything. Because you know, something we just, not even like crazy amounts of testing, like just some obvious things that should have been done when we were starting to compress timelines and just didn't do it. Like, so now I would say, like, we really think about that a lot more. Just, hey, spend an extra couple of days, like, really make sure it's tested and we all thought through it. And all the weird edge cases, right? Like, you gotta think about just, you know, different temperature changes and all these things. Like, one issue that we had that we shipped with in the first version of Spiro, that wasn't critical, but we didn't catch it after we started shipping the units. Like, a couple months later, we started getting emails about, we called it the strobing issue. The LED, and you put Spiro in the charger, and it would just start flashing. And we were like, oh my god, what's going on? We don't know if we got a unit back, or maybe we later saw it in our office. And what had happened is, when the battery, so you used your Spiro, drained the battery. But then in software, we cut it off, and we allow a little extra battery in there so that if you try to turn it on, it'll give you like a low battery warning. But if you let it sit, it self-discharges itself. If you fully discharge it till it hit our cutoff, and then you let it go for like another month just sitting there, it would actually drain to where the battery's built-in circuit would trip. And what happened is when you put it on the charger, the circuit would power up, the LED would come on, but that current draw was enough that it would trip that PCM circuit off again, and it would shut off, but then it would charge a little bit, turn on, LED would come on, you know, trip the circuit again, and it would get into this cycle where it didn't charge. It was because in our development, everybody was like using their Spiros every day and like keeping them charged. We never, or maybe, you know, you used it to fully let it discharge, but then, you know, it was only for a couple of days and then you charge it again. We never tested that case of leaving it discharged and then letting it sit, or, you know, manually just draining the batteries and then seeing what would happen. So luckily there was a way of, like, it's kind of weird, like, we had this magnetic reset switch inside of it. So you had to, we included one in the product, but it was on the bottom of the charger. So it was built into the charging case. You had to go around your house and find another magnet, and then sort of wave it around the perimeter of Spiro until you found the HAX sensor. And that would like hold the circuit, just, you know, you only had to do that for a few seconds, and it would be able to charge it enough in just like 5 seconds, and it would be able to get past that sort of strobing issue. But that was something that, like, we were all good with our product, and we just never tested that.
Yeah, in terms of testing, do it a lot and make sure that, like I said, the people that are not used to using your product are also tested. Because like when we ship the product, we realized that we build it for the 10% of our users that would be the most skilled. But there are a lot of people that are really, really bad. And you always like that on your customers, that that's always going to happen.
One sentence. Prices of components change. Remember this when you design stuff. They change daily. They change when you call. If you call too many times, the price might go up. Right? But think about this when you design stuff. Like, there's enormous flexibility in this pricing. So that is always unexpected if it's beyond your control. Also, get a great attorney. Also, find someone who can translate your stuff into Mandarin, and an attorney that works with someone that can do that. POs, all the deals with the factories, onboarding things, they're some of the most important things you do, and they're very expensive. So they should not be unexpected anymore because you've heard about it.
Okay, so last question. One statement, answer, one sentence. If you could go back to when you first started the company, what would you want to know? One sentence ago. Or you can start.
I need more time. I know. All right. Well, what would I want to know?
What do you wish that you knew? One sentence.
Do what you think is going to be the most fun. Give it a choice. Have the most fun. Let's work for us every time. That's your problem.
It's kind of fun not knowing. Like, you know, now that we've sort of built products, like a bunch of different iterations and stuff, like, you know, I'm looking for, definitely always looking for like new challenges and stuff, but I don't know, it's a fun thing.
So at first, I thought that you could hire young people, and as long as they were motivated and they could learn fast, everything would go well. Well, it's better to actually hire people that are experienced. They're going to be more costly, but it's going to save you a lot of time. So I would probably hire a few more experienced people right at the beginning instead of failing by myself. Yeah, that would be my advice.
I wish I knew everything.
I figured it out. Actually, if I could send one message back to myself, it's buy Apple stock and then when to sell it probably, so that we could continue to finance the thing, something like that.
I think Ian told a really good point. It's really fun not knowing. I can't tell you the number of times I think back to like that first year or that first 2 years. It's like, man, we were so like young and naive, and it was this stupid shit we did. That was a lot of fun. And with how terrible starting a company is, how it just doesn't make sense. How stupid it is to start a company. If you can't have fun, just don't do it. And I think that like not knowing is what makes it fun. That being said, I wish I knew it.
So it's scary, it's hard to do it anyway?
Do it, and I mean, I spend an awful lot of my time telling people not to start companies and not to start Kickstarter campaigns. So, coming from a person that has done both of them, because of how difficult or whatever reasons, but if you're passionate about it and it's fun, then do it. But don't.
All right, so that is great. Thank you very much for being on the panel.
Thanks to all of you for staying until the end. I think that was fantastic content. Thanks for Rosanna to, get the best out of those guys. If you have some questions as well for the speakers, probably you guys can stick around for a little bit, right? So you can have private information. So not that private, but the other private information for the company. Thanks to all. Thank you. One last thing. We have another meetup actually coming up on Thursday. I know it's kind of weird, about 2 in a week. The one on Thursday is about the future of fabrication. It's at Tech Shop. So if you're interested, you probably just Google that and you'll find it. Otherwise, you can email me, ben@hax.co, and I'll send you the details. Thanks. Cheers.